Good afternoon to each and everyone, and welcome once again to yet another afternoon of learning for us teachers, especially at these trying times. I'm Dr. Jun Santiago of the UST College of Education. I'm the chair of the Secondary Education Department. Again, some greetings first. To those who are watching us, I could see from my other screen that there are a lot of teachers with the live chat comments. So I hope that in this 1 hour engagement, we get to, of course, have a fruitful interaction of ideas and, of course, intersections of our experiences and different learnings. So may I just share it with you first, my presentation. The title for my presentation this afternoon is Key Considerations in Designing Modules for Distance Learning. And before I start with the presentation, there might be some of these questions that are at the back of your mind as of the moment. And this could be, of course, in terms like, would I get a digital certificate for this? And of course, the answer to that one is yes. That is, of course, if you're registered to this webinar. Another one is that, could I have a copy of your presentation? In the first learning session that Vival invited me for, I think it was through their Facebook live session, the 10 o'clock session. I actually had this experience of having to, of course, share the presentation deck with the people who actually watched and participated in the live learning session. So the answer to this question of could you have a copy of the presentation? Of course, yes, but the details will be given after the webinar. So stay with me within this hour of interaction. And just a disclaimer before I start with my presentation that all researches or studies or articles, images that I cited and used, of course, in this presentation and sharing actually belong to, of course, their rightful owners. So let's start. I belong to the UST College of Education, a Center of Excellence in Teacher Education. And one of our former deans, Dean Lourdes J. Custodio, once said, sagutin ko sa Diyos ang kinabukasan ng batang yan. And that actually gave a strong impact to my practice as a teacher, having been in the profession for more than 20 years. Even from the elementary department to the collegiate level, I've seen how the teacher education gets to be shaped. And of course, our commitment as teachers to the holistic development of our learners. I would be discussing this afternoon 12 key considerations in designing modules for distance learning. And my line of thinking is like this. It's going to be a fusion between research, and of course, that gets to be validated with practice or by practice. As I mentioned a while ago, I'm putting into this, sharing with you this afternoon around 20 plus years of professional practice as a teacher. So I'll be presenting 12. So we have partnering with parents, scanning for access to learning materials, brushing up on learning theories, methods, strategies, techniques, initiatives, and best practices. Complying with, of course, the learning competencies, synergizing learning competency strategies, assessment through curriculum mapping, establishing cross-disciplinary connections through curriculum mapping. Curriculum planning or mapping, by the way, was a talk that I also have given through the Vival learning sessions like last April 3. Utilizing the universal design for learning, defining the medium is expressing the message. What's in it for me? Contextualizing learning through real-world scenarios and settings, developing learner autonomy and flight pathing, success in learning, providing immediate feedback and remediation. And the last, of course, is instilling reflective learning. So let's take the first key consideration. The first one is partnering with parents. In our current situation right now, I firmly believe that all the more that we're supposed to have this strong partnership with parents, because it's not a face-to-face interaction between teacher and the students. In one way, you could say that the teachers become now para teachers. They are the intermediary between us as teachers and, of course, as students. And by the way, my presentation this afternoon cuts across different areas and levels in education. May it be from the K to 12 up to the tertiary, and who knows, it could even cross through graduate studies, especially for at least the first term of the next school year. I'm pretty sure a lot of universities or colleges would actually have more of the distance learning or online learning. So Laurent in 2008 mentioned that uh, every parent would, of course, want you to know that as a teacher, you have to know their child. And of course, first and foremost, like their child, because of course, if we don't actually see that the child there is a person whom we would have our responsibility as a teacher to develop the holistic aspect, then it would be quite difficult for us to actually perform our responsibility and of course our duties as teacher. Second is that if there is a strong parent-teacher relationship, it's actually associated with children's well-being and adjustment. If you would notice in the PTAs, usually it's a consultation between the teacher and the student, and how you interact with one another actually determines, of course, at some point, the kind of engagement that the child actually would exhibit in the school setting or in the learning setting. So if the connection between parents and teachers is relatively strong, founded on the very idea that we are partners, definitely it would have, of course, a positive effect on the child or the learner's well-being, and of course, adjustment to whatever learning challenges, learning tasks that we are going to be giving. And of course, this kind of partnership should be built upon open communication. And in this day and age of technology, we get to find different platforms by which this concept of open communication is actually built. We have different learning management systems that actually have that feature wherein the teacher and the parent could actually interact with one another. A second consideration in designing modules for distance learning is, of course, scanning for access to learning materials, especially now that I think a big issue that we now have in our current situation, and that gets to be a dilemma for a lot of schools, is access to learning materials, especially if it's not going to be face-to-face, but through distance learning. That material resources actually have a significant effect on the students' achievement, since they facilitate the learning of abstract concepts and ideas, and of course, discourage remote learning. Um, of course, it's easier if it's going to be face-to-face because there's going to be a higher level of interaction, but that cannot be done as of the moment. That's the reason why access to learning materials is actually very important, because they are the ones that actually develop the competencies among our students. And of course, because of the advancement in information technology via, of course, devices, having, of course, different platforms and different form factors. What do I mean by form factors? It could be, of course, that of a laptop. It could be a smartphone. Okay, it could be a desktop computer. It could be a tablet. And there are a lot of devices that can be used right now so as to access information online, especially if you're going to be developing modules and it would be deployed through your learning management system. There are 5 priorities for the internet and education and the fusion of these two. Okay. What are these? These would be infrastructure and access, vision and policy. It could be actually within the school. Okay. Especially if you have identified that clearly within your vision, mission, goals, and objectives. The concept of inclusion for all students, that of capacity, and of course, the last one would be that of content devices. Content and devices. I'm very happy that our partner, Vibal Group, actually addressed all of these 5 priorities for internet and education. Let me just give you an example. If we're talking of infrastructure and access, I think one concern right now is how is it that the school could actually continue on the educational delivery system since there is no face-to-face interaction. Well, you have, of course, your Vival V Smart School. Okay. Another one is vision and policy, because of course you might actually ask that question, then how is it now that students learning gets to be monitored, knowing that the partner on the other end of that line is actually a parent? Of course, Vival has the V Smart home management system, wherein you could actually interact with the parents, especially in terms of the students' progress and, of course, achievement. Okay. The third would be that of inclusion. And Vival actually has, I think, 2 of these that I could see from my end. One would be the Vival textbooks with the Learn Live augmented reality, because there are different means of representation of a learning material. It's not just through the text, but they could actually see it through AR or augmented reality. What you see on the screen is an engagement that they have for Vival as one of their writer editor. As a writer editor, this is the language and literature series, which rather I co-authored and edited with Dr. Nicolas Galvez. Okay. The fourth one is inclusion. So Vival actually has Vival Remote Learning Solutions. So you get to have, I think this is for the public school system, and you get to have there that this is actually online, this is actually modular distance learning. Okay. For parents, how do we actually do capacity building now that the parents actually have a more engaging role as teachers to their children? Okay. We have, of course, Vival actually has Vival V Smart courseware. So it's not just for the teachers, but also for parents. Wearing, again, as noted here by the poster photo, it's parent teacher hat. So they would have now to assume some of our roles, okay, especially for distance learning. And I'm very happy with this one because, again, the use of gadgetry is something that we really have to address. And Vival, as our partner in education, already saw this one happening, or that will be needing this one, that students will be needing this one. Even for teachers, VShop actually has different devices. So just look at this ones over here. So again, onto these 5 priorities for internet and education, Vival actually got you covered, and I'm very happy to that for this one, that People actually saw it already that these are the things that we really need, both as teachers and parents, for distance learning in this situation that we're in right now. Another key consideration, I think this third one already, key consideration in designing modules for distance learning is that we have to brush up on learning theories, methods, strategies, techniques, initiatives, trends, and of course, best practices. One of these things that I'd like to share with you is brain-based learning. It is as early as 1978 wherein Paul MacLean made mention of the brain theory, that the brain is actually very capable of multitasking, organizing, and developing repetitive patterns of behavior, and can also reflect and reason. Okay? So just imagine the capability of the mind to be doing a lot of tasks all at the same time. Okay? So this is a picture that would best explain perhaps the brain theory of MacLean. So, of course, the lowest of which is the reptilian brain, wherein the only thing that we focus on is instinct dominance or survival. It's just more of fight or flee, whatever is the concern or the learning task. Um, the next one is the human brain, wherein, of course, you form language, ideas, concepts, artistic visions. But the most important there is the mammalian brain, wherein we develop among our students feelings and emotions. And this would focus now more on the so-called life skills, the soft skills. Another one is the whole child approach. And there are 5 tenets to the whole child approach. One, of course, is that the students who enter the school are healthy. Second, that they're physically and emotionally safe within the school. That's the reason why in DepEd schools, if you have noticed within your locality, there is this tarpaulin that says this school is a zone of peace. So that one actually connects highly to the second tenet. The third one is that each student is actively engaged in learning. Fourth one, there is personalized learning. That's the reason why we have to tailor fit um, our learning management system, how we teach our students through the LMS through personalized instruction. And of course, number 5 is that they are challenged academically. Um, I think in the previous learning session that I have with Vival on curriculum mapping, I mentioned about the flow model of Shisen Milhai. And that's very important. Why? Because it's supposed to be that as you develop the competencies of the students on one side, even if you give them, of course, a series of challenging activities, they would still be able to comply with those academic requirements. Why? It is for the simple reason that you were able to develop in them the necessary competencies so as to address um, the need to acquire or develop, master the skills that are actually indicated in the curriculum guide or your syllabus. So this one is the science of learning and development. So this is the soul diagram wherein you get to find there within the diagram, how is it that we develop our students through the whole child approach. So there's a productive environment, there's social and emotional development, there's a system of supports, there's supportive environment, and there are different ways by which we could actually do that. Take this one as an example. When we say a system of support, how do you do that? You actually do that by giving them extended learning opportunities. So it's not just only within the module in itself, but are there other opportunities given to them after they have done the module so as to develop it further? Whatever is the target skill for that module. Number 2, coordinated access to integrated services. What is it that we actually provide our students so as to, of course, give them information, learning materials that they might actually be needing so as to develop the particular skills. And to this one good example is that if you have an automated library, well, that is a very good example to it. Okay. The next one is multi-tiered systems of support. So not just in terms of the teacher, but also the class advisor, the parents as well. I think all the stakeholders now, for the child's education, would have to really um, put their best foot forward in assuring that our students get the most out of this learning experience, even if this experience now is not anymore through face to face because of our current situation, but through distance learning. This might be something so 1970s. I would agree with those who would be giving a comment later on that this is so 1970s. But this is still very much applicable right now in our times. The theory of multiple intelligences of Howard Gardner and, of course, his colleagues. Okay, and of course, the two which are added would be the naturalistic and the existential intelligence. The original, of course, are the seven: logical, mathematical, interpersonal, intrapersonal, biological, aesthetic, linguistic, spatial, mathematical intelligence. Okay. After the multiple intelligences theory, that of course brought about also the additional two, okay, existential and naturalistic. Dr. Howard Gardner came up with another set, and this time around we have the five minds of the future. So what are the five minds of the future? And the future is actually now. Okay, so we have, of course, the disciplinary mind. The This kind of mind actually would focus on the mastery of the different schools of thoughts. It's really more content based. The synthesizing mind, that which integrates ideas as a collective whole. The creating mind, to uncover and clarify new problems. Respectful mind, the awareness and appreciation of differences, especially between and among uh, people. And of course, the last one is ethical mind, the fulfillment to one's responsibility. In this case, for our students, their responsibility as students. And you might actually ask this question, and that's actually a valid one if you're thinking of it at the back of your mind right now. It's which among these would be the most important? Well, at one time, I was an attendee in one of these seminars that UP Diliman organized, and one of the speakers there was actually I don't know, a classmate or a colleague of Dr. Howard Gardner when he was still in the university. And they saw one another at one time. And she asked the question, the good professor asked the question, which one among these five is the most important? And Dr. Gardner, according to her narrative, as she recalls it, is that it's actually the synthesizing mind which is the most important, because definitely if you're looking at it at the point of view of language or linguistics, it's actually the one that encompasses the other four minds. So the most important mind that we're supposed to develop among our students right now is actually the synthesizing mind, how to integrate all of these ideas in terms of their discipline, creativity, respectfulness, and of course, the kind of etiquette that they have and demeanor at the same time. I'm pretty sure for those who just recently attended a seminar or two, this is actually gaining ground right now among us teachers. We have Pedagogy, Pedagogy, and CyberGogi. And I believe that all of these new terms right now, which is really more of, how would we call it? Um, Word formations, okay, is that these actually echo Freire's problem-posing approach. Okay, why is that? Let's take the first one. If we see ourselves only within the realm of pedagogy, look at the one on your left. Again, look at the one on your left. Learner maturity and autonomy required. What is the sign? It's a negative sign. But if you're looking at The other side, learner maturity and autonomy, that is required. Is it actually required? Yes. Or is it developed? Yes. So again, on the aspect of learner maturity and autonomy and the requirement thereof, it's clear that pedagogy actually would develop that. Okay. The other point of view is, of course, on our part as teacher. Look at this one. There is much instructor control when you do pedagogy. And of course, course structuring. So it's rather rigid. But look at the other side of the coin, pedagogy. Instructor control and course structuring required. It's negative. I wouldn't say really it's negative, but it's rather, shall we say, a little bit relaxed. Why? You are not the only source of knowledge and information. Okay? In the teacher ed department in which I handle professional education courses, I tell the teacher ed students, the pre-service teachers, you see, I tell them, right now, our learners, our contemporary learners, the Generation Z, actually will be holding several things with their hands. On the left hand, they would be, of course, holding onto a clicker or a remote control. What for? For cable TV or educational TV. On the right hand, they would be holding a mouse. What for? For their laptop. Or they may let go of the laptop and tap onto the smartphone. And at the middle, they would actually have, of course, if not the computer screen, their textbooks. So imagine they are actually accessing information from various sources, not just one. So they are actually helping us also on the development and the production of knowledge and information. So pedagogy, a concept developed in 2000. Stuart Hayes was the one who coined the term. It's self-determined learning. Again, it focuses on the role of online instructors as coaches, a mentor, or facilitator, and encourages for the students to become self-directed or autonomous. Second to this one is pedagogy. Pedagogy would be the collection of best practices for effective peer learning. Take this one as an example. I'm pretty sure a lot of our viewers right now are parents. And if you have a teenager at home, I'm pretty sure that teenager is playing this game called Dota. Pardon me for mentioning this. But one thing with that game is that it has the ability for them to interact with one another. Okay? So they do learn from one another in trying to strategize how is it to defeat the opponents. And this is the reason why a lot of our students are so much engaged with games, especially with highly interactive games wherein they could actually communicate with one another. I'm pretty sure with our viewers right now, you have seen your own children having the headsets on with, of course, a microphone, and they interact with one another. It is because what is the best way, best strategy to defeat the opponent and win this game? And the very same concept is actually in pedagogy. And one thing that they like about the game is that there is, of course, an affirmation of whether or not their strategy was correct. Again, not to demean our fellow teachers, but sometimes our students would actually ask the question, Mom, how did I do in class? Do we actually give them an immediate answer? When you give them, let's say, for example, a quiz, let's say it's objective type, and the following meeting, they would be asking you, Mom, what's my score? And you would say, sorry, pardon me for the lack of a better phrase. Mag-intay ka, check ko muna. But in a game, it's immediate. Whether or not they did it correctly, there is, of course, an immediate feedback. That's the reason why pedagogy relatively is high among our students, because there'd always be a best way to actually develop that competency or skill. Okay? So pedagogy is actually based on the following principles. One, self-motivated learners. Two, that learning is a social, interactive, and an ongoing process. Okay. And of course, co-learning definitely is ancient. Uh, for one, you get to have, of course, a master and an apprentice kind of relationship here. Okay. And of course, the fourth is self-directed learners can actually organize their own course online. For those who belong to the Generation X, or shall we say the Agamulak generation, um, you and I know that when we were younger, coming off from school, okay, the first thing that you do as soon as you arrive is get out all of those items inside your bag. You may want to take a rest for a while, but you were highly independent. We were highly independent when we did our assignments. I'm pretty sure that the dining table at home for you, if you're a Gen Xer, it actually functioned or doubled as a study table, especially if you have your siblings around after dinner time. That dining table became a study table, and each one is a self-directed learner. And of course, there was also pedagogy over there. I've been watching the three other presenters on this um, distance learning series, and I think one of the speakers made mention about that one, that we now have, of course, students who could actually do autonomous learning, because of course they were taught perhaps by their parents that that's actually the kind of discipline that they don't actually need much aid from other people. It's not that they are not liking the aid. It's simply because they can already do the task. Okay. The next one is CyberGogi. Um, and we now have Google. And trust me, teachers, on this one. Even if you give your students right now a five items assignment, make it 10. As soon as you give them the items for the assignment, they're already thinking at the back of their mind, can I find the answer to this question over Google? Can Yahoo Answers give me an answer to this question? And this is relatively true. Why? Because we are now in the information explosion era. If you remember the trilogy, The Matrix, a key principle there is that he who holds information has power. Again, he who holds information has power. In the course of these trying times right now, and we were actually limited in terms of our movement, may I ask you, dear colleagues, what is one thing that you just learned during this quarantine period? You have not learned it before. What is one skill that you were able to develop? I'm pretty sure you had that one. And how did you do it? You were trying to search through the internet. It's really more of do-it-yourself learning. And that right now is actually happening among our students. But what we're supposed to be aiming for is to also guide them. How is it that they sift through the information? Because not all information would be credible, especially in this day and age of fake news. Okay? Which of this information is definitely valid? Okay? Which of this information can they actually make use, not just for one subject area, but something that would actually articulate in other subject areas as well? Perhaps not only in their grade level or year level right now, but perhaps in the next grade levels also. Okay? So when we're talking about uh, cybergogy and the use of course, the information highway, okay? um, Learning in an online program, we get to find that students actually have expectations. And we also have to factor in facilitators of learning. In this case, it would be you and me through the LMS or learning management system. And of course, a third one would be the constraints or the inhibitors to learning. That could be for yet another topic. And you and I know what could be these constraints or inhibitors to learning. Connectivity is just one of them. Another one could be, of course, that of the learning environment, the conduciveness of the learning environment, the home as the new learning environment now. How conducive is that learning environment? What if, for example, yes, the child wants to study, but is the environment permitting him to study? What if, for example, all of a sudden the kapitbahay would again, of course, sing the most uh, popular song of all, okay, to the karaoke system and it blares. Or the other side of the kapitbahay actually has, of course, sabong, for example, or cockfighting. So all of these are just, of course, the external noise, not about the internal noise of the student. Wouldn't that be also a constraint or an inhibitor to learning? Student engagement showed a linear relationship. This suggests that students' involvement in online activities could help to improve their performance on a module. Okay. Another one I'd like to share with you is grit. So Angela Duckworth is telling us that grit is the rare combination of perseverance and passion for long-term goals. And she highlighted 5 that you have to need. You need for the development of grit: courage, conscientiousness, long-term goals, endurance, resiliency, long-term goals and endurance, resiliency, and of course, excellence. Okay? Especially with the kinds of limitations right now for distance learning. How do we develop all of these 5 among our students? How do we develop the grit among our students to start and finish the modules that would be designing for distance learning? Another one is by Carol Dweck. This is the growth mindset. So this one is actually echoing, if you are an English teacher, this would actually echo uh, Pygmalion and Galatea, if you know these 2 characters from mythology. So, of course, Galatea became real because Pygmalion believed that she could be real. So same thing is true for our students. If the teacher believes that the student can perform very well, then definitely, okay, the students also would see that the teacher believed in him and he would be starting now to craft how is it that he would best develop the competencies or the skills. So look at the picture over here. The student would actually go through the following phases. One is the belief that he could get smarter in determining also his learning goal. I always tell my students the perennial question that students would actually have in your class someday, and this is in the teacher education concept, is to answer that question, what's in it for me? Every student who enters your classroom would always have that kind of question. What's in it for me? Ano ngayon sa akin? What's in it for me to enter a classroom and be there, interact with my classmates, with my teacher for 1 hour and a half? What kind of effort do I need? Because this kind of effort also would make me stronger as I develop the skill. I would have to spend more time and work harder. That's one thing that the students would have to recognize. As they would always say, no pain, no gain. So the more time that they engage themselves in learning, the better learning actually occurs. Okay? And look at the target there. The target there is, of course, higher achievement. With all of these 4 components factored in together, definitely that's going to be a big check on the part of the students. The students are high achievers. So when students believe that they can get smarter, they understand that effort makes them stronger. Okay? And it starts again with that belief among the students. There is one exercise that I engage my students in, especially for a new course right now for college. This is English 1. This is purposive communication. I usually engage them to determine their ikigai. Ikigai is actually a Japanese concept. The reason for being. There are 4 questions that they have to determine so as for them to clearly have a good picture of their passion and what they wanted to be, which is actually their would-be profession. These 2 things are tied with one another, passion and the kind of profession that they are actually getting into, especially for tertiary education. So the Kalatei effect suggests that when we believe in our abilities to achieve a goal, the more likely we will be able to achieve it. Okay? Another one among these considerations in designing modules for distance learning is, of course, compliance with the learning competencies. So I would highlight here 2. Either that this would be the DepEd curriculum if ever we get to be in the normal, whatever normal means now, the normal scenario. So that's DepEd curriculum. And most recently, DepEd released the MELC, or the most essential learning competency. So again, the MELCs determine and implement learning delivery approaches that are suited, I would say best suited, to the local context and diversity of learners. So it's not a one size fits all, but it has to be tailor fitted to the context and diversity of our learners within their learning environment, within our school community. Definitely when DepEd came up with the MELC, they were also considering these 3, the curricular priorities. That's the reason why I think there was a talk by Yusek Antonio on the MELC. And if you would notice, a great chunk of what belonged to the DepEd curriculum guide as we have known it and we have practiced it significantly were chopped. Okay? It is because, of course, these are now the most essential ones that we have to cover, especially with this kind of environment. So what are those competencies worth being familiar with? These are the ones indicated in the MELC. So no problem with that one. Okay. What are those things which are important to know and do? It's actually covered also within the MELC. But what I'd like you to look into, dear colleagues, is the last item, the very core of it, which is enduring understanding, because the content and the competency could be clearly determined by the MELC, or even, of course, the curriculum guide in itself in its entirety prior to this pandemic. Okay? But the enduring understanding, that's one thing that as teachers, we really have to sit down and really determine, think things over. What would be the enduring understanding that our students would actually have, having acquired, developed, and mastered those skills? Okay. So compliance with competencies, it's not just merely compliance, but it also talks about your expectations as teachers. What are these expectations? The beliefs about student learning, assumptions on the outcomes and the capacities of our students in learning, and of course, our beliefs about our students, teaching itself, and learning, and that would actually move towards individualization, especially if you have a clear grasp of who your students are. Okay. And of course, that would move towards self-efficacy, wherein as an expert, as you have tailor-fitted now the content and the competencies, you would notice that there was a significant change on how you would present the development of the learning competencies that would actually best bring about the expected outcomes among our students. And it's a cyclical process. It's not something that starts and ends. It's a cyclical process. Okay. And again, look at what is involved at the middle. Us, the teaching staff, and of course the materials that we would be using. I'd like to present also here the AMT model by Maktai. The AMT model is acquire, make meaning, and then transfer. So again, it's AMT model. It's not ATM, huh? It's AMT model. So acquire knowledge and skills. No problem with that one because DepEd already gave us, of course, the competencies, in which case these are predetermined already. But we have to ensure that our students actually acquire them. We also have to make sure that our students could actually find meaning within the competencies that we're trying to develop in them. And of course, the last one is actually more of quality assurance aspect. How sure are we that our students not just made meaning of what we develop in them as a competency, but can they really transfer this skill or competency in other contexts to other people? I'd like to believe that when one claims that he understood something, he is also able to transfer it in whatever means possible to whoever is in front of him. Uh, you could check out, of course, the link that I have here at the bottom of the screen for this kind of AMT graph. So acquisition, meaning, and then transfer. Okay. So again, on the acquisition part, no problem on this one, dear teachers, because there's already an MELC. And again, trust Depet on this one. You don't have to tinker with it. It's already predetermined within the first to the last week within every quarter. Okay? So meaning, this is the second aspect. So what are the key understandings that they have to develop within, of course, the knowledge and skills aspect? Okay, so this is one thing that we have to think about among our colleagues within the department. And of course, the last portion is transfer. What would be our expectations among our students for, let's say, lifelong learning? How would this now articulate beyond the engagement of, let's say, 10 weeks to 1 quarter, 17 weeks to a semester? Okay. So the next one is synergizing learning competency strategies and assessment through curriculum mapping. So again, as I mentioned, this was my topic in the first FB Live video or session that I had with Vibal. So again, it's an alignment of learning standards and teaching. So again, no problem if you're within the K-12 of DepEd, no problem with this one because they have already determined it through the MELC. Okay. And I'm pretty sure those in the tertiary level, you just submitted also your program specifications to CHED. Remember, all of the CHED CMOs would be 2017 for most for most of us. Okay, so no problem with that one. Okay, next one is an well-organized and purposefully designed curriculum. So again, it is true for both the MELC and the program specifications in case you are teaching in college. Okay. So curriculum mapping aims to address 4 things: vertical coherence. So from, let's say, kindergarten to grade 12, from first year college to fourth year college. So that's vertical coherence. Horizontal coherence is the competency or the set of competencies that we develop within one student, the same as the competencies developed with a student from another school. So that's horizontal. Okay. The other one is subject area coherence. Subject area coherence is, of course, among us teachers, do we actually develop the competencies the same way? What if, for example, you handle, let's say, the first 4 or 5 sections? Is it the same with the next 4 or 5 sections? And of course, the last one is interdisciplinary coherence. How else can the competencies articulate in other subject areas? That's the reason why, especially in these times, I would highly encourage an integrative assessment task. What would be your takeaway in this PETA or this assessment task? If you would notice, if there are 8 subject areas for elementary, just imagine if the student would be given 8 PETAs Why not try to integrate them? Anyway, you would have your takeaway for the very uh, competency that you develop among the students. Okay, so we cannot do an integrative beta if we don't actually sit down and talk among ourselves as teachers. What is the form factor? What is the output? Because each one of us would already have our takeaways or skills to determine among our students. Okay. And of course, we also would want to develop the concept, of course, of the four pillars of education, part of cross-disciplinary connections. Look at this one. So you have, this is rather old, but again, still very much applicable. So learn to live together, learn to be, learn to do, learn to learn. And of course, you have the performance indicators on the left, on the right side. So if you have learn to live together, so that's communications, conflict resolution, cultural sensitivity, multilingualism. Until, of course, the last set for learn to learn, solid academic base, comprehension, ability to research and analyze. Okay. I'd like to also um, cite here the very importance of the ASEAN fundamental principles. As part of the ASEAN member nations, I think it's our responsibility and duty to develop these fundamental principles among our students. At, alongside, of course, with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, the 17 development goals. Again, this could actually form part of the core values, or shall we say the soft skills that we would want to develop among our students. Okay? It's a social contract between the world's leaders and the people. It's a shared vision of humanity. Okay? And another one, I don't know if you've seen this one, the 7 C's. I'm pretty sure you have heard of the 7 C's before. Okay? The 3 R's and the 3 M's. You have, of course, the drivers of 21st century learning. You know this one's very well, but we have the 3 R's. It's not anymore reading, writing, arithmetic, but we have to have another concept of the 3 R's now. Risk-taking, reflectiveness, resilience, and the 3 M's. Made for everyone, meaningful, and motivating. If you'd like to see it in another graphical representation, look at the very core of it. So it's motivating, meaningful, and made for everyone. If you're familiar with the DepEd Curriculum Guide for English, you would cite there at the very core of the framework is meaning making through language. Okay. And of course, I'd like to also highlight here the curriculum for future minds. This is one thing that we can also develop among our students through the different modules that we have. And also, let's not forget, dear teachers, when we design the modules, the universal design for learning, there has got to be a beginning phase, an introductory phase. So that's phase 1. Provide meaningful and multiple means of representation. There is a developmental part, your teachers, within the module, that is to provide multiple means of action and representation, especially if you would have your activities there trying to develop in them the competencies. And of course, the last one is that of the conclusion part, that's the affective network part. So provide multiple means of engagement. So not all learners are visual learners. Okay, some of them are more into text. Some of them are actually more on motor skills development or showcase. So provide, of course, different means of engagement for our students. So the next is defining the medium, is expressing the message. I would like to cite here, this is just a paraphrasing of the monumental statement of Marshall McLuhan from Understanding Media from way back 1970s. The medium is the message. I'm pretty sure you have heard of this one if you're a Gen Xer. Okay, the medium is the message. Okay? And you see in the picture that these are the different media right now being used for education. But there's a second statement to that concept. The medium is the message. We shape our tools, and in this case, we have the different tools right now, and then our tools shape us. And indeed, our tools did shape us, because can you now imagine yourself without your smartphone? Can you now imagine yourself without having to access information over the internet? for the students right now, they would be needing all of these tools. That's the reason why uh, the use of online learning and the gadgetry that is needed is really a big issue right now among the parents and also the school. Okay, and of course, again, we live now in an information age, and we have here. I'm pretty sure you have seen this one also before. This is the pedagogy wheel. This is version 5 already. I've been telling my students in the teacher ed department, I tell them, I belong to the Agamulak generation. If only your parents and I, because I'm pretty sure their parents are my contemporaries also. If your parents and I were only given even just, let's say, 1/8 of what you see on your screen right now, then all of us could have ended up as high achieving students as well. All of us could have ended up as a cum laude. Why? Because there are a lot of things right there that we could actually make use so as to learn. It's not anymore limited through the library. Okay? So always remember, I tell the students, to whom much is given, much is expected. So imagine our students right now have all of these at their disposal so that they could actually um, facilitate and, of course, ensure their learning. Okay. So what's in it for our students? When students learn from others, they actually enhance comprehension. Another one is that it creates a positive working environment, because that's the kind of environment that they'll be in someday when they're already in the workplace. So even if you are teaching in the basic ed, try to instill in them that concept that when you work, you have to also make sure that you are able to interact with other people also. That's the reason why whenever we ask our students to do an assessment task, it's not always individual. It could even be through a dyad, a small group, a larger group perhaps. Okay. And of course, the last one is that social interaction provides meaning for our students to view topics from multiple perspectives. And I think a higher degree of learning and meaning making could be seen there if our students could actually hear from one another. Okay. So authentic learning is learning designed to connect what students are taught in school to real world issues, problems, and application. That's the reason why we have to contextualize learning whenever we design modules for distance learning. Take note of this one by Rowe. If we only expose our students to these real world problems, definitely they would find innovative ways to develop their capabilities and possibly address those real world problems. Another one is that let's not see that the students are trying to challenge our authority inside the classroom. No, it's not that. It's just that they have other means by which to gather information to get that particular knowledge about the topic. And again, they regard as teachers as a useful but not an interfering source. So it's just a matter of choice between two things. Okay? Are you the sage on the stage or are you the guide on the side? I believe that as teachers, we're supposed to be the guide on the side. The spotlight is on our students. Okay? No longer the knowledge supplier, but also a manager, a resource person, and a counselor. And I'm pretty sure in this coming school year, these are the roles that we would have to play. Okay. So again, those students who have higher beliefs, um, attitudes towards learner autonomy actually show better planning, they're goal-oriented, and they're actually autonomous. Feedback is another key consideration in designing modules for distance learning. That, of course, I hope and pray that this is not going to be true to any of our viewers, to any of our colleagues. Look at this one by Hounsell in his study, that there are feedbacks given by teachers that are either uneven, often unrewarding, and on occasions confidence sapping. Take this one as an example, dear teachers. What if, for example, as a student, you received your paper, and then what the paper actually has is a question mark written in red. So how would you feel about that one? What is the questionable item there? The teacher did not actually identify what is it really. Or when the teacher actually encircled something, so what is it that the students would actually do about it? Okay? So all of those are actually, I would say, unbecoming of a teacher whenever we do feedback. When we give feedback, it has got to be something which is detailed. Okay? So look at this one. Are we developing among our students feedback literacy? When you gave a question mark on that paper, when you encircled a particular item there, did it instill upon the student feedback literacy? Eh, anong gagawin niya doon? What is it that he's going to do with the question mark? Answer you back with an exclamation point. See? I'd like to believe that each and every feedback should be constructive. It should develop the competency that you target for that particular learning phase. It should give the student a clear grasp of what is it that he has to fine tune, or shall we say, change or modify. So it actually suits standards. And the standards are, of course, the ones indicated in the curriculum. Okay. So the high quality feedback directs learners to higher order learning goals. So see, the more specific it is, the higher the quality of the feedback, all the more that it brings us, of course, the desired results among our students. The last one, with around 2.5 minutes to go. Reflection. Usually this is one thing that we don't actually do. Whenever you attend a seminar, I mean face-to-face seminar, what is it that you do with the evaluation sheet? Do you actually take time to think things over and evaluate it really objectively and prudently? Same thing is true with learning. After one session or two among our students, how is it that the student would actually do reflective practice that would actually lead towards better understanding? On our part as teachers, for every session that we get into our class, after the class, do we actually take time, I mean me time after the class, and ask ourselves, what is it that happened well in class today? What would be those things that I could have done better? And how do I plan to develop it the next time around? How would I avoid these pitfalls or slips the next time around? Okay. So reflective learning also would focus on understanding events in students' lives as a consequence of hopefully adding and enhancing meaning. So it's actually more of learning, but we put a premium on, of course, the very importance of what is it really that would have an articulation of what they have learned after classroom hours. Okay. So experiential learning is actually developing strategic teaching interventions aiming at scaffolding skills relevant to students' current learning phase. So we're also providing reflective skills and development of reflective skills for our students so that they can adapt to the learning phases, challenges within the phases, and slowly but surely also develop the skills within, of course, the targeted time, especially in the case of the MELC. Okay. So again, in this 1 hour session, we were able to target, of course, the 12 key considerations that I posited or shared with you. Second, partnering with parents, scanning for access, brushing up on the learning theories, method strategies, compliance to the learning competencies, especially with the MELC, synergy of competency strategies and assessment, cross-disciplinary connections through curriculum mapping, universal design for learning, Defining medium is expressing message. Contextualizing learning, developing learner autonomy or the flight pathing of success in learning among students. And of course, the last two, providing immediate feedback and remediation. And the last is instilling reflective practice. I would like to end my presentation with this statement from Benjamin Franklin. I am pretty sure a lot of you teachers have um, heard of this one in other seminars also, but let me also highlight this. So by Benjamin Franklin, tell me and I forget, teach me and I remember, involve me and I learn. So maraming salamat po to each and everyone. Um, of course, if there is a set of questions just before I flash the last slide, I am pretty sure you would also want to ask the question, sir, where is the details po for the slide deck later po. So there's a question over here. Okay. Uh, there's a question here by Ma'am Kimberly Llanes. Um, Establishing professional relationship with our students. And she was asking, is it okay for the students to call us mom or dad or befriend us on social media? Um, I think as teachers, we have to know where to draw the line. Even if this is social media that we will be using or the LMS that you have there, I think you still have to be addressed as a teacher, mom or sir. Um, Also, there's a little bit of danger. I hope you don't mind if we're going to be using just social media as our pseudo LMS. That's the reason a while ago I made mention that Vibal is actually our partner in this distance learning, because they have set up already an LMS wherein it gets to be formalized. That's the danger po if you're going to be using social media per se. It's open to everyone. But again, let us maintain the level of professionalism among us teachers, okay? That we don't let our students be calling us mom or dad. There might be, of course, that concept, of course, that we are their parents, but to really make use of the terms, I'd rather stay on the safe side. Okay. Um, there's a question here by Ma'am Rowena Rivera, and she's actually asking, is remediation is possible in this new normal? Yes, I think so, ma'am. You can actually do remediation, but of course, whenever we do remediation, we have to make sure that there's really first data coming from our students' performance that they need remediation. You see, if this is only in the face-to-face scenario, let's say, for example, for at least within K to 10, I think it's incumbent upon us that on the fifth week, we're supposed to check already the progress of our students. That if ever there's a student lagging behind, well, we have to make sure that that child is scheduled for remediation already. And we're supposed to be ready with our remediation materials. But for distance learning, I think if indeed the school year would still open by August 24th, as they say it, I think it's high time now that we prepare not just the modules for distance learning, but what would be the remediation learning materials for distance learning. Okay, so we're supposed to be ready for that one. And of course, patience on our part, because the only way by which our students can interact with us is through the LMS or the learning management system. Okay, so from Mom Kathleen Rose Flores, how do we motivate our not musically inclined students to learn music or other subjects that would not be their interest? Definitely, ma'am. We have to recognize not all students are relatively high on a specific intelligence. Okay, if you're talking of they are not really into music, they're not into arts, perhaps bit by bit, if you try to mix and match them with different students in the classroom. Um, Actually, on that question, not really liking music, I cannot imagine po that there's a Filipino who's not in love with music. I think as a Filipino, everyone among us loves music. That can be done if you can actually mix and match the students. I think even without um, literally interviewing them, within your questions, you could actually have a profiling. What is it that they are interested in? As against, of course, the multiple intelligences, if that is going to be one thing that you would want to determine among our students. Okay. Last two questions po. From Ma'am Irish Labonete. Do you think collaborative learning will be compromised in distance learning, especially elementary and high school students? I don't think so. You see, collaborative learning among our students, even prior to this situation, prior to this pandemic, they were already doing collaborative learning. Trust me, ma'am. Let's say, for example, if you're going to be assigning them into a group PETA or assessment task, they already would gauge among themselves. Even if, let's say, for example, you did the grouping yourselves, they would look at one another. That's one thing that I observe among my students in the education high school. Whenever the pre-service teacher would assign them to group work, may it be for developmental activity or for the PETA, just by the mere fact that they heard their names being partnered with someone else, automatically they connect with one another using their eyes. And that is to you better suit up, because I would want to have a good grade on this one. And that's another tendency among our students right now. When you give them the assessment task or the PETA, one thing that they immediately would focus on is the rubric. Because remember, grit talks about excellence. And that is the reason why they would want to see first, how would they be graded? It's not that the students are grade conscious. Of course, I'm pretty sure as teachers, you have heard of the students saying, Ma'am, where's my 2 points? Ma'am, where's my 3 points? And you recall, but I gave the student already a 98. Yun na nga po, ma'am eh. Yun na nga po, sir. What is it that made the student fall short of the expectations as indicated in the PETA? Hindi po sila grade conscious. Even if this is collaborative, all the more, who among them gave them a -2 on the supposedly 100? Sino ang pabuhat sa kanila? You see, as soon as you assign, they could already know, engage upon themselves, and tell one another, you better groove up to this one, you better suit up because I would want to have a good grade. And that's the reason why any student right now who is an autonomous learner can can guarantee that he would really contribute to the success of the assessment task. So, pwede pa rin po yan. From Ma'am Milet Bonifacio, how will distance learning be effective for special education programs, especially for functional skills learning? Well, that's honestly po, for special education, that's not my line of expertise, but I'm pretty sure that there would always be um, ways by which we can connect with parents, and if ever there are other special ed professionals that who would be helping us as we develop the much needed competencies among our students, definitely that's a welcome idea. Definitely in these times that there is no face-to-face interaction, it would really be challenging. But I believe that with the help of other people, um, of course, having this sense of responsibility towards developing the child to the optimal potential, uh, certainly our students will still develop the much needed functional learning skills. So the last slide po, as I already answered the two questions, the last slide po is this one. Okay. Just type it in po. Sandali lang po. Okay. So, sorry for that one. The email, I actually set up an email where I place the slide deck. It's Juan de la Cruz, sorry, Teacher Juan de la Cruz rather. It's Teacher Juan de la Cruz. Sorry for that one. Okay, it's Teacher Juan de la Cruz at gmail.com, and your password is #LearnAsOnePH. Again, you would be able to access or get the slide deck through this email. So open the email, it's teacher1delacruz at gmail.com, and the password to that one is #LearnAsOnePH. But please do not change the password. Anyway, I have the recovery phone number for that in case it happens. So if in the event Vibal again invites you for this one, for yet another learning session, I'll be still using the same Gmail. So at least immediately after the session, you get to have the copy of the slide deck. Again, please feel free to share this one with your co-teachers. I'm pretty sure you will be having also your echo seminars or echo sessions. So you could make use freely of the slide deck. Okay. So thank you very much, Vibal. Thank you very much, dear teachers. So once again, like, follow, and share Vibal channel for, of course, all of these wonderful learning opportunities and experiences given to us. Maraming salamat po.